question for you. The other day, somebody was talking to me about a legacy trust. I have some stock in a bank here in Georgia that's going to be selling. My husband's company, we're getting ready to come into some things. Our kids are in their 20s, and I'm also doing a lot of probate and estate stuff. Just it's fallen into my lap, so it's like I think I'm going to kind of go into that direction. Tell me what, like I said, somebody mentioned a legacy trust. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just general, high.
Okay, you know. Well, I have to make an assumption that the legacy trust is another name for a type of trust that is fairly common, but somebody just happened to call it a legacy trust. I'm perceiving that that trust is a type of trust where property goes into this trust. You know, trust is like a bucket. It's in this bucket, and the persons who have established this bucket, they're the settlors. They own this property during their lifetime. They can do whatever they want. But when these settlors die, the inheritance instructions in that trust document say something to the effect of, this property shall stay in trust for the rest of our children's lives. And during during our children's lives, here are the rules that apply to this trust. Sometimes it'll say that the property can't be sold. Sometimes it'll say if it is sold, it must be used to purchase another property, or it'll say, it will say, and while the property is still intact and in this trust, it can be rented out, and the rent will go to the children in equal shares, or it will say it can provide to be a principal residence of one of our kids or most of our kids, and we have rules about who can live there at what time and should they pay rent. So you have this property in this trust that's got all of the instructions that by which the trust has to be administered and held and distributed, that the property is. And then it says, okay, when the last of our children die, well, now what? Well, if the persons who set up this trust says, we want this property to be the pyramid to our future generations, well, that property still may be considered untouchable while it's in the hands of the grandchildren. So now maybe the grandchildren can't sell it, or the grandchildren can charge rent, whatever. Now these rules and regulations and do's and don'ts apply to the grandchildren. Okay, that could be in the form of a generation skipping trust. It could be in the form of this legacy trust or what have you. But I think that's probably what do you think? Does that kind of sound like what you're understanding what that legacy trust is?
Yes, and that they could almost generation skip. That was one thing he said about it. The other thing was that there was some tax benefit to using this specific trust versus just a regular.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that was that.
Yeah. Well,
pay the IRS less money.
Yeah, the tax benefit would be that if this was a generation skipping trust that has all the required bells and whistles that the IRS requires requires to exist in order for it to be considered a generation skipping trust. The benefit of that is so that when the property goes from, so here, mom and dad die, property stays, goes in the generation skipping trust. The children of mom and dad are the beneficiaries. So when those children die and that property or the sale proceeds therefrom or whatever's in that generation skipping trust will go to their kids with no estate tax.
Okay.
No estate tax. So, my dad used to say there's no second bite of the tax apple, because maybe there will be an estate tax after mom and dad are dead when the property goes to the generation skipping trust. Well, the purpose of that is to avoid that second bite of the tax apple on the same property when the property goes from those deceased children to their children. I think that's maybe what you're referring to.